Welcome to our week 2 discussion session for SOFLA EVO 2021. And I'm Lane Marshall. I'm in New York speaking to you today. And we are going to meet every Sunday at this same time for a discussion. And every week's discussion will have a different flavor to it, depending upon what you are all doing in the EVO sequence of 5 weeks, and depending on who we may have invited. You might notice we've invited somebody today who will kind of launch things for us. And then on Saturdays, as some of you know, because you were here yesterday, you can put a green check next to your name and participants. Who was here yesterday? Anybody was here yesterday? On Saturdays, we're going to have a workshop, and the workshops will be an hour and a half because we're going through all 8 steps. You know, there's 8 steps, so you got to go through all the steps. So it takes an hour and a half. So thank you for doing that little extra time with us. On Sunday, it's a discussion which could go on for hours, but we're going to do 1 hour. So Sundays is an hour. Saturdays is an hour and a half, and Saturdays is multi-level in that we are implementing the model and analyzing the model at the same time. Sundays is more of a free-for-all discussion, and I'm going to be inviting you to both speak and give your audio if you want, your video if you want, or just stick to the chat, or just sit there and drink it all in or take it all in, whatever you like. It's a very free-flowing format on Sunday, okay? And at the end of the session every Sunday, I'll go over, there's the professor thing, okay? I'll go over next week's tasks. So I'll go into Canvas with you and show you what's coming up next week. We might take a look at perusal and play pause, especially today. Some of you are not there yet. We have quite a few who are. So there's a lot of going on in this session, and it's all new. So I'd like to always remind everybody that we are looking for your feedback. You aren't hurting our feelings if you tell us we need to change things. You weren't shy about that yesterday either, so that's okay. We're doing our best, and we're doing something brand new, and we're really looking for your feedback. And in that vein, I just launched a discussion. You'll see it, and I'll show it to you later. An ongoing SOFLA discussion that will be for weeks 2. This is beginning of week 2 already, believe it or not. It's going to go fast. The discussion will be weeks 2, 3, and 4, and it's an ongoing SOFLA discussion. And I'll show you what that means and what we're talking about when we say ongoing SOFLA discussion. So that's a place also where you can talk about ways to change, tweak, improve this model that's evolving as we speak, okay? All right, so I just wanted to give more people a chance to arrive before I introduced our guest. And let's see, okay, all right. So I see we also have some of our moderators here. So I just want to briefly, some of you may not have met our moderators. So could I ask any moderators who are here to turn on their webcams? And could you please say hello and just introduce yourself in person, kind of not in person, but as close as we have to in person. If you're a moderator, so that people get the sense of who you are. So I see Kazuko, do you want to introduce yourself? One of our moderators, Kazuko.
Hi, my name is Kazuko Saito. I also live in New York, but I'm originally from Tokyo, Japan. Hi.
Okay,
Hi, everybody.
Great. And on Saturday, we're going to be learning some Japanese. Guess who from? Okay, that'll be our workshop. All right, Heike. A lot of you know her from yesterday, but there's some new people. Go ahead.
My name is Heike Phil. I'm currently in Germany. My company is called Let's Talk Online, which is based in Brussels. So I'm representing Europe here, pan-European continent. Greetings all.
Okay,
it's 6
great.
p.m. by the way, if you're interested.
Okay. And I think Carolina will be coming in later. Carolina has dueling EVO synchronous sessions because she is also moderating the Flip Learning one. So when she comes in, perfect timing. How could we do it better? Carolina, would you like to introduce yourself? There might be a couple people who don't know you. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I don't know if my connection is good. I don't think so.
It's okay now. We got it.
Okay, so hi, I'm Carolina. Okay, great. So I'm Carolina from Bogota, Colombia, 6 years. And I was in a Flip Learning session just now because we have the two synchronous sessions back to back. So welcome everybody and welcome face to face. Okay, so that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we have one more moderator who's not able to be here today. In fact, there's a good reason, not a bad reason, good reason. She is doing a big weekend-long celebration of her first wedding anniversary this weekend. So they're having a blast. And that's why she can't be with us this weekend. But you will all meet her, Heather Rubin, and you'll get to know her also. That's our other moderator. Okay, so now I'd like to introduce our guest speaker. Our guest speaker is someone I've known for a number of years through TESOL, and we have mutual interests in Flip Learning, which we've been doing and going to the Flip Learning conferences, and we started to cook things up together. And Ilka Kostka is an instructor at Northeastern University, which is in Boston, north of New York. Most of you know Boston, New England, okay, in the US. And she teaches English to both undergraduate and graduate international students. And Boston has perhaps the most international students of any other city in the United States. So, so there are a lot of international students there from all over the world. She'll tell you more about that. And in terms of her research, she in fact, just published an article on peer review in Flip Learning and how Flip Learning can enhance peer review and how they can align. And she can tell you more about that if you ask her later. She and I published an article this past August on SOFLA and was the first place where we presented it as a cycle of 8 steps. So that's a seminal article. I'm hoping that will guide a lot of you in terms of what SOFLA is. I guess that if you want to tell them more that I didn't include, but that gets it started. She also has a delightful daughter, the cutest little girl in the world, Simona. I just have to say that, right? Because all things Simona. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Ilka, who's going to share her screen, and feel free to put anything in the chat, questions, comments, go ahead, whatever you need to do, all participants. Okay, Ilka.
Thank you so much, Helene, for the warm welcome. I have some slides today just because I personally love slides and it'll help me stay organized and help you get some visual support as we go through. So I'm going to talk today about, I'm going to share my screen and talk about my experiences with SOFLA. I'm not going to talk about the actual approach and the 8 steps that Helene mentioned that you all are working on, but rather I'm going to talk about my own personal experiences with the approach. So let's get started. So here's a brief introduction to my teaching context. I teach at Northeastern University, as Helene said, which is in Boston. This is our beautiful campus. I haven't been there since March 2020. Because of the pandemic, but we're right in the middle of Boston, and we are we have a Pathways program. So in this program, international students come to us to improve their English before they matriculate to Northeastern. But while they're doing that, while they're taking ESL classes, they are also taking content courses, which can transfer once they matriculate. So they're getting a head start on their studies. These content courses include philosophy, history, calculus, I definitely don't teach any of those. I focus on ESL. Most of our students are from China, but we've also had students from Korea, India, South America, mostly Venezuela, Colombia, and we've had some Brazilian students and some students from Europe. And they're in our program for 1, 2, or 3 semesters, sometimes just 1 semester, depending on where their English proficiency is when they begin. And that's a key point. That takes me to my journey with flipped learning. Students have such little time with us. And when I was teaching in the undergraduate program, I would often have the students who are with us for 1 semester. So time was key. We didn't have a lot of time to help them improve their English and their academic skills. So my flipped learning journey began about 6 years ago. I started with TOEFL prep because, like I said, students didn't have a lot of time. They don't have a lot of time in our program, but they needed to take at that time the TOEFL in order to matriculate. So I wanted to not spend a lot of class time on TOEFL and exercises. Some students did well, some students felt confident they were getting TOEFL preparation other places, and I just didn't want to use my class time for TOEFL prep. So I thought, let me start making some videos. Let me check out this flipped learning model that I'd been hearing about. I didn't know too much about it when I started, but I started flipping TOEFL. And from there, I began flipping my reading and writing class, and then more recently, listening, speaking. And it takes us to today, where I'm flipping my online instruction because of the pandemic. We're online. All of our courses are online. Our students are not able to come to the US. A running theme throughout my flipped learning journey is definitely professional development, which is what all of you are doing now by participating in the EVO. I've been reading about flipped learning and publishing on it, presenting, going to conferences, talking to fellow ELT flippers, if I can use that term, to learn more about the approach and try to make my teaching approach better. So I am still doing that up until today. I'm still learning. I'm still reading a lot and talking to others and trying to refine my approach and my implementation of flipped learning. So why SOFLA? Like I said, we're online now. We moved online very quickly in March of 2020. And I started flipping my culture and communication graduate class, which is a listening speaking class that's based on content. The content is learning about the United States. So I needed a way to organize instruction. I wanted to keep things going. And I think I was in a good position when we moved online suddenly, because I had been flipping my on-ground courses and I had been using my learning management system heavily and using technology heavily. So the flip to, if I can use that term, to online instruction wasn't too terrible for me. So you're all aware of the SOFLA approach of flipping online instruction. And to make things very simple, we take the flipped learning model that's presented on ground and move it online. So in-class learning then becomes synchronous class sessions, and out-of-class work becomes asynchronous learning. And these, I have found, have been the key to my success with SOFLA and teaching students online. The first that comes to mind for me is presence. Students, I think, often have a negative reputation or a negative view about learning online. They don't think it's as good. Of course, our international students want to come to the US and they want to be on campus with everyone else and study with us. So I think some of them have had some reservations about learning online. So I would say one of the most important things to implementing SOFLA successfully is being present. And Helene and I talked about this issue of teacher presence in the article that we published last year, and I have a reference at the end. But they want to know, students want to know that we're there, we are still behind the screen helping them learn. So I think SOFLA is a really great way to maintain teacher presence because the synchronous component is very important and the asynchronous component is important as well. And we're teaching them there in both of those spaces. Accountability is important in flipped learning, and actually all of these 5 components here are important in flipped learning, but I would say even more important in online learning. We have to hold students accountable to doing the work, or else our meeting sessions, our synchronous time is not as effective and it kind of falls apart. So I've had colleagues say, I want to have discussions in class and in Zoom when we meet, but my students don't listen to the lecture. And I say, well, what do they have to do with the lecture? Oh, nothing, they have to watch it. Well, that doesn't always, if there's not anything attached to it, then that doesn't always encourage students to do the listening or to watch the video or do the reading or whatever it is. So accountability is important for that reason, but mostly it's important because it gives us key information about students learning outside of the class. So accountability, feedback also is really key with SOFLA, with giving students feedback in the asynchronous space. I use Canvas, that's our learning management system. And it's very easy to leave audio or video or written feedback. So I like to have a combination of both. And I think feedback connects to presence because it helps students feel like we're still with them and still teaching them. So it's a great way to give, to meet students individually and to give them that individual connection that they often miss online. Formative assessments are super important, and I've had to change some of the ways that I've done these assessments. I'll talk about that in a second. And then organizing materials. It's very important when you don't see students all the time or they can't really meet you after class quickly to ask something, that all the materials online are really well organized. They know where to click, they know where to find things, and that it's consistent. So every week, if you're giving students materials, that they're sort of done in the same way at the same time. So for instance, I release my asynchronous modules that students work on outside of Zoom. I release them at the same time on Friday so they know what's coming up for the following week. And I try to be as clear as possible. So again, all of these are not new to flipping, but I would argue that they are even more important when you're implementing flip learning online. So implications, I would say that flip learning is a robust framework for organizing learning. And that's why I have these pieces here in this image. And this is why I like SOFLA so much, is that it gave me a framework. It gave me a series of steps, gave me structure when I was thinking about how I'm going to move my instruction online and what I'm going to do and how I'm going to set up my fall course. And even now, how I'm setting up my spring course. It helps me understand where to move the pieces, so to speak, where to put work and learning in the asynchronous space and where to put work and learning in the synchronous space, which I've said before is really important. The synchronous space and synchronous learning is important in flip learning, even more important in online learning because we don't see our students as often. And I think because we have this robust structure, we have this model, we can begin immediately. And I would say if you're used to flipping on ground, then you can move, and you have to teach online, then you can, I think, very easily move your model to an online space. And if you're not experienced with flipping, then there's a series of steps here that you can begin right away to start thinking about how you can flip in an online environment. But it doesn't come without challenges. These are the two challenges that I faced the most since last year, since we started teaching online. The first was access. So I said before that a lot of our students are in China. In fact, all of my students are in China this semester. So Google is not available, YouTube doesn't work. And there have been some security concerns about Zoom. I use YouTube a lot because I found great videos that students would watch outside of class. So I've had to adapt. I'll talk about how. And then the time difference, right now students are 13 hours ahead. So that gives us even less time during the week to meet with them. And then developing materials, it takes time, especially if you are flipping for the first time or don't have materials that are readily available. But I'm an optimist by nature. With challenges come opportunities and ways to think differently about what we're doing. So in terms of access, we use Canvas at Northeastern. And because I don't have access to YouTube, but especially Google, and I use Google Forms and Google Docs a lot in my classes, I've had to, it's forced me to explore other features of Canvas and look at what we have available. So I found a feature in Microsoft or Microsoft Office 365 that's very similar to a Google Doc. So I'm going to be experimenting with that in my reading and writing course this semester. And then in terms of YouTube, I've created my own content, my own videos from materials that I've had before, which is really nice because the bonus is that it gives us additional teacher presence. So students feel like they're still learning from us in the asynchronous space. But I do want to emphasize that videos are not a requirement for flipping on ground or online. You don't have to use videos. I like it because when I teach listening speaking, it's extra listening practice. And then the challenge of the time difference, I can't do anything about that and the way the earth spins, but what we have done is rearranged our schedule as a program, which has worked out nicely. So instead of meeting students once for 2 hours, I now see them twice a week for fewer hours, for an hour and a half each. So I see them more often, and that frees up time in the mornings and the evenings for my colleagues to have synchronous sessions. And in terms of materials development, I would say use what you have. You can use worksheets, handouts, use the textbook, use videos that you've created. There are lots of videos out there available for presenting content to students. So some final remarks, I have to close that. I think, the pandemic has posed so many challenges in so many different ways for pretty much everyone, no matter where you are. And, we're no different in our programs. But I think if there's any silver lining is that thinking about flipping online and moving instruction online allows us to rethink what we're doing, right? Reflect on our teaching, rethink language instruction, returning to the fundamentals, and designing learning activities and experiences that support learning goals. So I hope that in all of these sessions that you're encouraged to think about how you're designing learning and what you're doing with your students. That's always a plus, I think, as teachers, whether you're very experienced or beginning or somewhere in the middle. So the slides will be available to you, and I have some links here that I think would be helpful. The community of inquiry framework is what Helene and I drew from in our article, which is the article from TESOL EJ. I know I'm breaking some APA rules here, but I wanted to put the hyperlinks on the references page so you can read about that. And there's some other resources here about SOFLA and flipping online. So thank you very much. And I look forward to, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and I look forward to the discussion with you. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the chat now.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And we're now open for questions. I know I have a few questions, but I want to see what other people would like to ask first. Okay, so what questions do you have that you'd like to ask, or comments that you would like to make based on what you just heard? And of course, I realize that everyone's in a very different situation, but it's important to look at one situation and see how SOFLA plays out there. It helps you to have a lens to look at how it's going to play out in your teaching context. So we'll also have a chance to hear from some of you who have some similarities and differences in your context, and maybe Ilka can point you in a certain direction to help resolve some of the issues that you have, just like she's resolved issues that she faced based on her background in flipping.
So I see a question here about forms. So Google Forms, I used to use in the US. So I haven't used this yet, but in Canvas, which is our learning management system, it's Microsoft Office 365. And then they have what looks like Excel, Docs, and PowerPoint, I believe. So you can use the docs. I've also used, for formative assessments or for check-in activities online. I've also used Qualtrics, which we have available through Northeastern, through my university, and that's available everywhere. You could also use SurveyMonkey, which I am fairly certain is available in China. So there are some workarounds for the Google products. And if it's collaborative writing, you could also use a whiteboard in Zoom. That works as well.
And one thing to remember about SOFLA is it's all about the pedagogy. And so whatever tools you can find, however you can find them, it's not tied to particular tools. It's tied to particular tasks and steps. So we all can share whatever tools we use.
I think that's a,
Same as, you know, when you make
Yeah.
videos like yesterday, you made them in different formats.
yep, you can use, someone said in the chat, you can use the poll that Zoom provides. Right, so there are lots of workarounds, and this is the creative part. You know, things can change from semester to semester. We were using Zoom in the fall, now we're going to be using Teams. We changed our learning management system, so we had been using Blackboard since I started at Northeastern almost 7 years ago, and then we very quickly switched from Blackboard to Canvas. So I spent all of last summer learning Canvas and the different features. So it's important to emphasize that it's not so much about the technology and the tools, it's about the pedagogy, it's about the teaching. So I think that you can find the tools that will help you reach the goals that you want for your teaching.
And I know that in the discussion, it has come up, I think in perusal in one of the discussions, and also in our themes for this SOFLA session, that this is major change for many of the instructors, not just for the instructors, for the students. And we have a document each week in our session that talks about managing major change, and we're looking at it from various different perspectives. So have you encountered resistance on the part of your students or your administration? And how did you deal with this managing major change in your teaching?
The major changes in terms of the technologies?
Switching pedagogically to SOFLA in terms of students resisting it, or issues with your program director or something like that. Or maybe there was no resistance. That's possible too.
Yeah, I mean, it really was more of that. And a question that comes up a lot is, you know, do you tell your students about flipping? Do you kind of explain the steps, and this is my approach, and this is why I do it, and how? And on ground, I've done that sometimes, and sometimes I haven't. I think students like to have some rationale as to why we make the choices that we make as teachers. But other times, I think if you just teach the way you teach, then they realize, okay, this is Professor Kostka's approach. This is what we do, and it's seamless. In terms of resistance there's not much student resistance. And I think, in fact, I would say that they like the way the course is structured. So I got very positive feedback from them last semester. And in the fall was when I really implemented SOFLA to a T and really followed the framework throughout the whole semester. And I got very positive teaching evaluations, but besides that, I would collect feedback from them every week about the course and how things were going. And it was anonymous feedback, and they seemed very happy. And they said that, you know, my feedback to them was very important, and they felt like it was like a real class. So I'll take it. That's what we want. We're doing on ground, I think, as much as we can online. So that's why I put the feedback in the slide. But in terms of resistance from others, from colleagues, and from a program director, I haven't faced that much of it as well. I do have amazing colleagues. I have to say it on record, because we are such a great group and we help each other so much, especially because some of my colleagues are in other fields, like I said, history and calculus and philosophy, because they're all in students take those courses in our programs. And they come to us about these questions of what to do in Zoom. I'm meeting my students for Zoom. How can I make the best use of my Zoom time with my students? You know, I'm going to lecture, and I say, oh, maybe that's not the best, you know, way. Maybe you can move the lecture outside of class, because students will have the time and the benefits are the same for flipping online as they are on ground. Students will have the time they need to watch the lecture. They can pause, they can rewind. There are no tech issues because it's pre-recorded. So you know that they're not going to miss something while you're delivering it live. So they've been very on board with using SOFLA and at least moving direct instruction to the asynchronous space.
I think there's a question in the chat about the steps. Can you see that? from
How many hours is generally fine for each step of SOFLA? Could we have maybe a little bit more information about hours? Is it for setting it up or for the synchronous sessions?
And Gunnar, do you want to speak? And you can turn on your audio and ask the question. Sure, there she is.
Hi.
Okay, I was there, but for a synchronous lesson, what do you think? How many minutes or hours is appropriate for the lesson? Because the students can easily be bored. Thank you.
That's a great question. They could be bored on ground, but I think there's a difference between being in a physical classroom than staring at a screen, which all of us are doing so much now. We're on screens for everything, for meetings, for teaching, for, you know, our kids who are going to school. So I would say that it depends on a lot of factors. For us, I mentioned the time difference, and this was a really important factor in terms of how much each of me and my colleagues got for a synchronous session. So we looked at the amount of hours we have for the course. My course, one of them is 6 hours. Usually we meet for 6 hours. And I said, well, 6 hours on Zoom every week is not going to be feasible, especially because of the time difference. And especially because that's a long time to sit at a computer. So I cut it in half. So, you know, it depends on your students. It depends on logistical factors like where they are in the world. It depends on other classes that may be running in your program, and they need some time as well. It depends on how long your students could sit at a computer. Maybe adults could focus a little bit more easily, but you know, I find myself getting tired on Zoom too. So I think it really depends on a lot of different things. I don't think there's any one answer for like a special number for how long students could spend in a synchronous space on Zoom. But it's important to think of all the things that I just mentioned to keep them into account.
And I think another point is that that's one reason there are 8 steps. Each step doesn't take up that long a time, so you're constantly shifting them, and the activities are very different from step to step. So that keeps it alive, keeps it moving, like you saw yesterday. If you were there, yeah. Okay, we have.
I just want to jump in on that to keep things moving. This is something I do physically in the classroom on ground, but I participated in a faculty retreat on Friday for 3 hours, and I thought, oh, probably like a lot of the students think, 3 hours, what am I going to do? It's going to be a long time. And the moderators kept things moving. So we had some breakout rooms, we had discussion, we had some collaborative writing, then we had a break. So that's important to consider as well, how much time you have, and then how you can keep the lessons flowing. And that's just like on ground as well.
So you mentioned accountability as something that was really important to build in. And there's a question in the chat from Veronica about formative assessment. That one, could you comment on that?
How I go about formative assessment. So I used to do, you know, in class, I would love to just put students in groups and walk around and see what each group is doing. So I'd be right there in the moment. And I believe, Helene, your article that you published in TJ in 2016 talks about on the spot and formative assessment. We're right there. I can see what they're doing in person. But that's different online because unfortunately we can't be in every breakout room. So I love using breakout rooms so much, and students like it as well, but I could only be in one room at a time. So I can't do anything about that. But one thing I do is I try to sneak in, and I try to sneak it. By sneak in, I mean I shut off my video and shut off my audio and don't say anything just so I can listen. And I try to go into the different groups to see how they're doing. Another thing I do is that I have them produce something in their group work so I can see, you know, how the group work is going and what they've done and how they've applied what they've learned outside of class. So it could be like a collaborative document or something similar. Another workaround is to have them record it, and you can have them record their group work outside of class. So they could be working on a project or a presentation, record it and send me the presentation, and I can first see that they've worked together, but I can see how they work together and how they understand, you know, the concepts that they should be applying. I used to love to do quick formative assessments on paper in class, give them a small sheet of paper, have them answer some questions. So that's done online, and Helene's model talks about how to do check-in activities. So things are a little bit different. Now with assessments, they've become open book because we're no longer in the classroom where students can put everything away. So everything has become open book now. There's no really no way around it. So for vocabulary, it's open book, but a workaround is to have them to design questions on the quiz to make sure that they show what they learned, that they know the words. So it's not just clicking definitions, but it's applying their knowledge of the vocabulary to answer the questions. And then, you know, there are other features in learning management systems that you can set up to kind of put boundaries on the quizzes. So you could have a time limit, you could not release the answers until after they submit the quiz. There are other things to do that the ways that you can set this up to see that they're really producing what's coming from them, and it's not heavily from translation services or from students working together or something. So yeah, creativity. It's a little bit.
It's interesting. You're making me realize that it's almost forcing us to do better assessments because we're really thinking through what is it that will really show us and prove that they understand. Maybe what we were doing before didn't really do that anyway. So, you know, we're back to creating fertile spaces for learning and helping students really master the material. So in a way, come out, you know, even better.
I agree.
Okay,
so one thing I started doing was have audio files and quizzes because I wanted to see how well students could hear vowels or consonants, for instance. So I would make put minimal pairs and just have little audio recordings, and just they would say a word like C. So which word was said in the audio? So I would never do that in class, but now I'm doing that online. So it helps us to it does help us become more creative in how we're assessing.
Okay.
The tricks and the things that I've been doing online, I will continue doing when we go on ground because they worked really well.
Okay, can you see the chat? Because there are a number of more questions in the chat.
Yeah, wow, so many questions.
Okay, Chizuko is asking what kinds of questions you ask students every week for feedback in order to check how they're doing well and improve your instruction. So feedback on your instruction.
is everything. Feedback, like Helene mentioned, she wants feedback on EVO. I want feedback from students on my teaching. And of course, I give them feedback on their learning. So it goes both ways, but I used to do these in exit slips. I used to bring this little box of index cards and put a couple questions on the board and collect them anonymously when I left class. You can do that in some kind of electronic form or by email or privately in a chat in a synchronous session. But I would just ask them reflection questions. So what did you learn today? What's one takeaway from the lecture on listening for main ideas that you didn't know before? Or what's something that you're thinking about differently with this topic? Or how could I improve my teaching next week? Or just all kinds of reflection questions. You know, what didn't work so well today? What could you have done better on this assignment or this homework? So I do that a lot, probably even more online than I do on ground. So. And
that's not specific to SOFLA. That's part of instruction.
Absolutely.
Getting the feedback. Okay, question.
You can make those questions related to online teaching, right? So were you able, so week one, I'm starting on Tuesday. It could be, are you able to find everything easily in our class? Do you have any questions about our Canvas page? Am I speaking too fast in the PowerPoint presentation? My weakness, especially when I'm too much time. So things like that can give you really key information that you can use to improve your teaching. Okay, and do you have to do each and every step of SOFLA? Helene, can I pass that one to you? I think
well, the only time I find that it doesn't work to do all 8 steps is when you're working with young children. And I know that one of the EVO sessions focuses on young children, and I'm trying to take my brain to figure out. I have someone a former student who teaches elementary school here in the States. And we're trying to put together a version of SOFLA that works for that age group. But for older students, I mean, it is designed as a cycle and each piece complements the other piece. So ideally, you do go through the 8 steps, but it's supposed to be very natural when you go through the steps and you'll get used to it. It's almost like one just leads to the next, leads to the next, leads to the next. So it isn't as if, oh, can I skip this one? Because then you're breaking a link in a chain, a logical chain. That's my best answer. But let's answer that question again in a couple weeks and see if people would look at it differently in week 4. So I'm not begging off, but let's look at it again. Okay, the next question's real long. Have you had a chance to read it?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now about Blackboard, when students switch from Blackboard to Canvas. So our students, first of all, weren't in that switch because they had already left our program. So we got lucky. As faculty, we're the ones that were really having to move to Canvas and figure everything out. Although Canvas is very intuitive. Do your students feel uneager to join the lesson? So in Zoom lesson before. So maybe this is about buy-in and participation and the actual platform. You know, like we said before, I don't know that the platform is as important as what you're doing in that platform. So whether it's Teams that I'm going to start using this week on Tuesday, in fact, or Zoom or Skype, or, you know, some teachers use WhatsApp, you know, whatever it is, I don't think that plays as much of a role as what you're doing in that platform. So that's what I would say. And then students cannot feel on board and not be motivated to participate if they don't understand how the program works, the platform, they don't feel comfortable, they have a lot of technical issues that will make them not interested in using that platform. So I would say for this question here, it's good to ask them and say, and this is what we did last semester in our program. I do a lot of, I get a lot of feedback from students in my own class, but then we did a programmatic survey to students and just asked them how things were going and these kinds of questions, and they can give you some good answers. So maybe it's related to the technology, maybe it's not, but you can definitely do some digging and try to figure it out. A question from Gabriella about managing students' absence. Oh, yes. Well, you know, attendance, I think we worry about online. We worry about it on ground as well. We have policies in our program about attendance, and for international students, there's a certain percentage that they have to attend. If not, then they can have some problems with their visa and go into probation and things. But I have to say, I haven't had too many problems with absence and lack of participation in Zoom. So I hope that I'm gonna be lucky this semester. But I think if you follow SOFLA and keep the synchronous sessions for practice and application and group work and community building, then students are gonna want to attend. If students are logging into Zoom and listening to a professor talk nonstop for an hour and a half, I mean, I think that would be difficult for us, right? I mean, I don't want to be in a lecture sitting for an hour and a half in a computer. So I think, you know, I think as you work with SOFLA and implement the steps, students are going to want to be there. So that would be my best answer, my most optimistic answer.
And I think
yeah,
sometimes we forget, you know, people say, what if they don't do the pre-work? What if they don't come to class? Well, there are always going to be students who aren't going to do out of class work. There are always going to be students who don't attend class. So the question is the percentage higher, lower, or the same for a SOFLA class? And that's something there's not data on yet, but that's something that's a question to ask. But there's always going to be students like that, no matter how you're teaching.
Yeah, and I think it's important to catch it early. If you have students who are not logging into Zoom, you know, we reach out right away and send them an email and get in touch with their advisors and say, you know, what's going on. So I think in online teaching, there's a lot of troubleshooting, maybe more so than on ground, but we're always trying to figure out where issues are coming from. Issues with motivation, with participation, attendance, you know, using tech tools. I would say I feel like I do that more online than on ground.
Yeah.
What if students don't do anything in the breakout rooms? Right, is that, they can come to class and fall asleep. It's the same thing, but yeah, having some deliverable really helps to keep them on task and not texting, during a breakout room. Like I said, I can't see every breakout room, but have them have to do something. They have to present out, which is part of SOFLA. One of the steps you can do is have them present out what they've done in the breakout rooms. You can have them produce a video on Flipgrid. They could do that. They could do some kind of collaborative writing document. They could have to prepare slides. Just giving them something to do, a task, will help. We'll see what they've done and who's done what, and it'll, I think, inspire them to want to be working and staying focused in the breakout room. And also setting a time limit, I would say as well. This is something I do in class. Sometimes I even project a Google timer, see the clock ticking, and somehow that motivates students to want to stay on task. If they see we only have 10 minutes left, then they're going to want to stay on task.
There's a question about recording the breakout rooms. What do you think about that?
After the lesson. So I've heard that this is possible, but I have to be honest, I have not done this myself. So Helene, have you had students record breakout rooms or record?
Well, I guess not from a technical standpoint, but philosophically, I think that's their time, their private time. And we want them to be accountable, but we also want them to feel comfortable. And I think when you're being recorded, I mean, I hope everyone's comfortable right now, you're being recorded. But when students are in a breakout room, I think, let them be there and not feel that it's being recorded. On the other hand, they might want to do a recording of something that they've done in their breakout and present it and share it in the share out. So depending on what kind of breakout it is and what you're doing that day, you might want them to record in their breakout. I know Zoom does allow you to ask the host for permission to record your breakout, but I think Carolina knows much more than I do about the technology, so I'll hand it to you.
Hi, I just wanted to say something because actually I have my students record their breakout rooms, and what they do is they use either Loom or Screencast-O-Matic, the free version. Usually it's a very short video, and they are the ones in control, like they decide when the recording starts. So they can actually have their moment to discuss, to negotiate, to decide on what they're going to share in the video. And once they're ready, they start the recording and they show that recording in the share out. So definitely I have used it, especially because that material is later reusable. We can have that little video as, for example, I did it once with a vocabulary exercise. So we exchanged videos and that's how the feedback happened. So they were more attentive to specific things, etc. So yes, but respecting what Lane was saying, respecting their privacy and their space. So they decide when the recording starts. That way, they're in control.
Thank you so much, Carolina. Those are really great points. And it just reminds me that every class is different. So all these things I've been doing in the fall may not work on Tuesday. They may not work the spring semester. I think we know our students, we know them the best, we know what's going to work, what they'll feel comfortable with. So that's also something to keep in mind. And we have to constantly keep adjusting. Yeah.
So we just have another minute or so because I want to spend the last segment of today going through Canvas and talking about what it is you're going to be doing this week. But if you have more questions for Ilka, a few more questions, you want to either ask them in the chat or raise your hand and start talking. I think they're asking for your article, the recent article.
The one from this week. I actually
where is it?
It's in a Journal of Response to Writing, and I can include the link in a second. And then you will share the PowerPoint slides, right? Because I do have the link.
Oh, the link is on the slide, the reference slide to the new article.
Not to the new article that was published like a couple days ago. So
that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, that I can add, and I can also put it in here. So
okay.
Yeah,
I think they're
Yeah, I can answer the question about preview and discovery in the chat. So yeah. Great. I wish everyone the best of luck. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed being here. And these have been really great questions. So I wish everyone good luck as we start a new school year, start a new year. I hope it's healthier and safer and just better for everyone. So take good care, everybody.
And if they want to reach you, what if they thought of a question,
Yes.
you know, later today, they want to ask you, can they contact you? Do you have
Absolutely. I'm going to put my Northeastern email address in the chat. So please feel free to send me an email.
Perfect. Perfect. And you are the very first guest speaker ever in the EVO SOFLA session.
Wow. Very cool.
So thank you so much. We couldn't have had a better experience than the one you just gave us for exploring what's going on with all things SOFLA. And I just want to reiterate to everybody, you're all in a very different situation, but it's important to see what one person who's actually taken the plunge and done it with real life students, what has that person experienced? It kind of gives you a way in to figure out, what can I do in the same way? What's going to be different for me? And then maybe next year you'll be our guest speaker and you'll come and tell us about what you've done with SOFLA, right, Carolina? We'll have, you never know, right?
It sounded beautiful. My heart just felt great. Yeah. Lots of you can be our guest speakers next year, so that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Ilka, for coming. It was wonderful to hear you.
This was wonderful. This was great. Okay. Now, I'm going to share my screen and I want to talk to you about what's set up for you for next week. Okay. So, so you know how I'm learning, by the way, I guess if you've been to anything so far, you know, I'm new to I was going to say SOFLA. I'm new to Canvas. So I really defer to other people for Canvas. I'm learning it myself, but I think you're getting used to navigating it. I know I'm learning. So we're on week 2. Today is the beginning of week 2. And if you're new to EVO, the 5 weeks go by very quickly. So what we're trying to do in this brand new session is guide you each week. This is where you need to be each week. But if you're busy in week 2 and you have to do 2 and 3 together, it's okay. You have to do your own pace. But we're trying to guide you in a way that by the time you get to week 5, you'll actually have, what will you have? By week 5, you will have your very own SOFLA lesson developed with your 8 steps, okay? And we're starting today. So you will now start to develop your SOFLA lesson. So we have SOFLA steps 1 to 3, equity and enrichment, January 17 to 23. So I'm going to click that and it will show you. This is the announcement. Essentially, it's similar to the announcement I sent out. Okay, so what you're doing right now is attend. Yay, you're doing that. Okay, the next is to read. Now, remember, each week, as I mentioned before, we're giving you a very short one-pager inside Canvas on managing major change. So last week was innovation under pressure, which was the equivalencies, limitations, advantages, and innovations. So that was the one for last week. This week, we're talking about managing major change using our mantra, which we mentioned today, creating fertile spaces with the 4 E's, equity, enrichment, engagement, and empowerment. So you'll read that document. It's just right there in Canvas. And then we have a crosswalk, you know, aligning the SOFLA steps and the 4 E's. That was a great suggestion from Carolina, that we really can't just talk about it. We have to show how they match. So that's a brand new document that's never appeared anywhere else. So please, we want feedback on that document. Does it help you? Does it make sense to you? In any case, we'd like you to take a look at that document. Then you go to perusal. And in perusal, you will find what is this? This is an article. Oh, this is, oh yes, this article I just wrote, and it's been accepted and it will be published, but it's not published yet. But I'm giving it to you anyway because I want you to read it. So it's not long. It's not too academic and it's not too long. It's very readable, but it's brand new and it does the same thing. It talks about the 4 E's and SOFLA and how they connect. So it's essentially taking that document, the crosswalk, and talking about at each E and how the steps line up with the E's. So you're going to read that document in perusal. And for those of you who've been to perusal, there are at least 30 of you there. You know that you put comments on the side as you read. You highlight and comment. And there's tons of great discussion in perusal. I go in there all the time to take a look and comment with you. So if you haven't been to perusal yet, get on over there. And there's a tutorial from Carolina in the tutorial section, and the enrollment code is there. And the enrollment code is also pinned to the top of the Canvas section where we pinned the tech forum, okay? If you can't find anything, ask us, but we're trying to put things in more than one place, which is a principle of SOFLA or any online learning, is put things in more than one place so that people don't say, I can't find it. So there's not usually one place where things are. Then you're going to watch the first 3 steps. Step 1, I separated them out into short videos. So they kind of end and begin a bit abruptly. I'm not the greatest, I have to say. My strength is pedagogy, not technology. That's why Carolina and I are joined together at the hip, because when I have a tech issue, she's there for me. Okay, so my videos are a little like cut off at the beginning and end, because I try to do, you know, like Heike does these wonderful things with Camtasia. I did the best I could, but I'm telling you in advance, they're not, production values are, you know. Okay, so you watch the 3 steps. And then on Saturday, you're going to come, I hope, to learn some Japanese from Kazuko. And that's a workshop, a SOFLA workshop. So remember, we're learning some Japanese, but she's trying to take us all through the 8 steps. And that'll be Saturday. And we don't have the links yet, but we're going to send them to you this week. You'll get the pre-work. Do the pre-work. You found out yesterday, you know, it's a good idea to do the pre-work yourselves. I mean, you're learning about SOFLA, so experience it. You will get the link to the pre-work and you will get the link to the Zoom for Saturday. Okay, now there's a new section. This is brand new. You'll see it each week, called Build Your SOFLA Lesson. So you're going to start to build. This is why I needed a few minutes today to go through this with you. So you're going to do the first 3 steps. We can't do 1 step per week because we don't have 8 weeks. So we're going to do the first 3 steps this week. Okay, steps 4 and 5 next week, steps 6, 7, and 8 the following week. So that's the pace that we're hoping. So what you're going to do is create your own pre-work video following the guidelines. If you went to the session yesterday, you're already on the ground running to do this. If you did not attend yesterday, the recording, it was recorded, and the link, if it's not there yet, it will be there, right? It's there. Okay. All right. And you can.
I have to interrupt. I have to say that you have to scroll all the way down, because
all the way down
after the information
okay.
that Heike placed about the videos. So below that, you find the link to the recording.
Okay. So watch the recording for some tips on doing your own pre-work video. And then you're going to decide what your sign-in will be and decide on your whole group application. Now, what is this link here? Well, what we've done is we've created tables for you to enter your information about your SOFLA lesson so that your fellow participants and the moderators can go to it and look at it and give you some feedback and get ideas for their own. Okay, so so there's a table. I'm just gonna, let's see if I can go to a new tab with it. So this, for example, is the table for step 1. So we ask you to put your name. Here's Heike, who gave you a sample. She gives you her name, the topic of her pre-work, the age group, and then a link to the pre-work. Okay, so this is the table that you will add. You know, you keep adding a row. It's open for anyone to participate. Try not to erase anything that other people put up there. Well, you all know, you know, be careful. So you're going to work on the table and add for each of the 3 steps. Okay, so so that's what I meant by the link here. So there's a separate table for each step. So there's a table for pre-work, for sign-in, and for whole group. Okay, and for sign-in, if you're going to have one prompt, it's very simple. It's a prompt. You can just create a Google Doc or whatever you want to send us to what your prompt would be for the sign-in. What is it you're going to ask the students to do? Okay, same thing with the whole group. Oh my goodness, it's 1 o'clock. Okay, in any case, that's how you're going to start to build. And then we always have optional activities. This week, the optional activities are articles that help you make videos. There are 2 of them here listed here. They're in perusal. There's also much more on the 4 E's, either in perusal or in PlayPosit. You can go wherever you want to find out more about the 4 E's. There's also a much longer version, if you're up for it, a 1-hour version of all the 8 steps of SOFLA, if you want to watch that. And that's, oh, wait, you know what's not added, which I added in the announcement, is the new discussion. Let me just show you very quickly, and then we'll have to close. There's a new discussion. The getting to know you is continuing, but we have a new discussion starting today. It just started. And it's everything SOFLA. Carolina came up with the title here, wins and misses, lessons learned, potential challenges, whatever. Okay, so this is an ongoing discussion for 3 weeks until we have our reflection at the end. Okay, so you're going to use the SHAC technique, share, help, ask, and comment in this discussion. Okay, so it opens today and it runs for 3 weeks. All right, and so that discussion is wide open now, and you can participate and talk about SOFLA. And I just didn't add it. I added it to the announcement, but I didn't add it to the tasks, which I will do the minute we say goodbye now. Okay, okay, that's it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And do any of the other moderators, stop share. Do any of the other moderators have anything to add before we close? And we'll see each other next Saturday. Any moderator want to say? Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, remember that in EVO, I mean, we just want to give you as much as we can so that you understand SOFLA as clearly as possible, but don't feel overwhelmed. Don't worry, don't run away, okay? Just take the pass little by little, time yourself. It is all broken up in a lot of little dots, but everything is gonna take you no more than 20 minutes to do. So don't worry, it's all dosified and doable like EVO, you know? So just organize yourself from the beginning, you know, like if you can start like taking a look at it today and seeing your schedule for this week, and then you'll get everything done and be able to produce your own SOFLA lesson, because that's at the end of the day what we all want you to do.
Okay, everyone, and I saw the request for a complete SOFLA lesson, and we do have sample SOFLA lessons that we can post up there for you to take a look at, okay? But we want you to kind of get your own ideas too about what SOFLA means to you, okay? I saw that though, we'll do that. All right, I'm gonna stop the recording. Thank you for coming. If you didn't come, thank you for watching the recording. I hope you got a lot out of watching it, and we hope to see everyone on Saturday, January 23rd. I don't know how to say anything in Japanese. Arigato is the only word I know. Okay.
Arigato.
Kazuko, what can you say? We can say goodbye. You want to tell us one word?
Okay. また来週、さようなら。ありがとう。Oh yeah, arigato is good. Yes, arigato.
Heike speaks a little
Wait
Japanese
for that
too.
Japanese
Yes.
lesson.
Well, if you know some Japanese, please let me know so I can use you as an assistant teacher, maybe.
Okay, everyone. Okay, have a great week too. We're all there for you all the time. Okay, bye-bye.